I stood in the doorway of my grandmother's lakefront cabin, my hands shaking as I held the foreclosure notice. The paper felt like ice against my fingers, even though it was early March and the Vermont sun was trying its best to warm the porch. According to this letter, I had 30 days before the bank seized the property my grandmother had paid off 5 years ago. That couldn't be right. Grandma Rose had left me this cabin in her will 3 months ago. I remembered her last words to me in the hospital, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so frail. "This is for your dreams, Sarah, not for your father's empire. Promise me you'll write here." I'd promised. I'd planned my entire summer around it. Quit my teaching job, saved every penny, prepared to spend June through August working on my novel. This cabin was supposed to be my sanctuary, the place where I'd finally pursue what I'd always wanted instead of what was practical. My phone buzzed. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. She'd been calling nonstop since Grandma's funeral, each message a variation of the same theme. Your grandmother chose sides. You're being selfish. Your sister needs that money more than you need a vacation house. Emma didn't need anything. She was 22, living rent-free in my parents' guest house while she found herself. Meanwhile, I'd been working 2 jobs since college, paying my own way, building my own life. But that had always been the dynamic. Emma was the golden child. I was the disappointment who chose teaching over joining the family real estate development business. I looked at the foreclosure notice again. Unpaid mortgage. But there was no mortgage. I'd seen the documents. Grandma had owned this place free and clear since 2020. Something was very wrong. I pulled out my phone and called the bank. The automated system bounced me through 4 menus before I finally reached a human being. "This is Sarah Chen. I'm calling about a foreclosure notice on a property at 47 Lakeshore Drive in Stowe." The woman on the other end clicked through her computer. "Yes, Miss Chen. The property is currently in foreclosure due to non-payment on a mortgage taken out in January." "That's impossible. My grandmother owned that property outright. There was no mortgage." More clicking. "According to our records, a refinance mortgage was taken out on January 15th for $200,000. The first payment was due February 15th and was never made. Neither was the March payment." My stomach dropped. January 15th, 3 weeks after Grandma's funeral. Who took out this mortgage? The property owner? Sarah Chen. I never signed anything. There was a pause. "Miss Chen, we have your signature on file. The loan was processed through one of our senior loan officers, Marcus Webb. Everything was properly notarized. I need copies of those documents. All of them. I can mail them to your address on file. Email them. Today." I gave her my email address and hung up. My hands were shaking again, but not from cold this time. Someone had forged my signature. Someone had taken out a $200,000 loan in my name. Someone was trying to steal my grandmother's gift. And I had a pretty good idea who. I sat down on the porch steps, my mind racing. My parents. It had to be. They'd been furious about the will. Dad had actually laughed when the lawyer read it. A cold, bitter sound. A cabin and $50,000. Mother always did have a flair for the dramatic. That money should have gone to the business. Mom had been quieter but more cutting. "She's poisoning you against us, even from the grave." But would they actually commit fraud? Forge my signature? Risk everything to get what they thought they deserved? I thought about my father, Lawrence Morrison, one of the most successful real estate developers in New England. A man who'd built his empire on knowing exactly which rules could be bent and which ones couldn't. A man who'd always said that business was about leverage, about knowing what people wanted and using it. I thought about my mother, Patricia, who'd been his partner in every deal, every negotiation, every calculated move. She'd taught me that family loyalty meant supporting the family business above all else. When I'd chosen teaching, she'd called it selfish. When I'd moved out of their estate, she'd called it ungrateful. Yeah, they'd do it. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Uncle Mike, Dad's younger brother, the black sheep of the Morrison family because he'd chosen to be a high school counselor instead of joining the business. "Heard about the cabin. Your dad's been talking about a lakefront opportunity." "Careful, Sarah." I stared at the text. Uncle Mike wouldn't say something like that unless he knew something. I called him. "Hey, kiddo." His voice was warm but cautious. "What did you hear?" He sailed. "Your dad's been bragging at the country club about getting a prime lakefront property for pennies on the dollar. Auction next month." He didn't mention it was Rose's cabin specifically, but the timing lines up. He's planning to buy it back, after he stole it. I don't have proof, Sarah, but your father's been desperate for capital lately. He's got 3 development deals that need funding by June, and his investors are getting nervous. 200,000 would solve a lot of problems. So, he stole it from me. I'm sorry. I wish I could say I was surprised. I closed my eyes. Thanks for the heads up, Uncle Mike. Sarah, fight back. Your grandmother would want you to fight. I hung up and sat there for a long moment, watching the lake. The water was still partially frozen, ice clinging to the shoreline like it wasn't ready to let go of winter yet. I knew how it felt. Then I opened my laptop and started searching. Property records, county clerk, deed registration. I needed to see exactly what they'd done. 2 hours later, I was sitting in the Lamoille County Clerk's office, watching a woman named Jennifer scroll through digital records. She'd been helpful when I'd called, even more so when I'd shown up in person with my grandmother's original deed and my driver's license. Here we go, she said, then stopped. Her face went pale. What is it? She turned the screen toward me. There, dated January 16th, was a deed transfer from Rose Morrison to Sarah Chen. That part was legitimate, matching Grandma's will. But below it, dated the same day, was a refinance mortgage, $200,000. And below that, my signature. Except it wasn't my signature. It was close. Whoever had forged it had practiced. But I'd been signing my name for 30 years, and I knew every loop, every slant. This was wrong. The S was too wide. The C had the wrong curve. The whole thing leaned slightly left when mine leaned right. That's not my signature, I said. Jennifer zoomed in on the document. Are you sure? I pulled out my driver's license and placed it next to the screen. My real signature was right there, under my photo. The differences were obvious once you knew to look. Oh my God, Jennifer whispered. This is fraud. Can you print everything? The original deed, the transfer, the mortgage, all of it? I'll need to note in the system that there's a potential fraud investigation. Do it. While Jennifer printed the documents, I called the one person I knew could help. Rebecca Torres had been my college roommate, and now she was a lawyer specializing in property law in Burlington. We'd stayed close over the years, meeting for drinks every few months, complaining about student loans and dating disasters. She answered on the second ring. Sarah, how's the cabin? I need a lawyer. My parents forged my signature to steal it. There was a pause. I'm sorry. What? I explained everything. The foreclosure notice, the refinance mortgage, the forged signature, the country club conversation. By the time I finished, Rebecca was all business. Don't talk to your parents. Don't talk to the bank. Don't talk to anyone except me. I'm coming to you. Where are you right now? County Clerk's office in Hyde Park. Stay there. I'll be there in 40 minutes. She made it in 35. I watched her stride into the clerk's office like she owned it, her briefcase swinging, her heels clicking on the tile floor. She'd always had that energy, like she was ready to take on the world before breakfast. Jennifer showed her everything. The documents, the timeline, the signature comparison. Rebecca took photos of everything, made notes, asked questions I hadn't thought of. Who's Marcus Webb? She asked Jennifer. Senior loan officer at First National. He's been there for 20 years. He notarized this? Jennifer pointed to the stamp on the mortgage document. According to this, yes. Rebecca's jaw tightened. A 20-year loan officer would know a forged signature. Either he's incompetent or complicit. We left the clerk's office with a folder full of evidence. In Rebecca's car, she pulled out her laptop and started typing. First, we file a police report. This is criminal fraud. Then we contact the bank's fraud department, separate from the loan department. We notify them that you're disputing the signature and that you've never authorized this loan. We get an injunction to stop the foreclosure. And we get a handwriting expert. A what? Someone who can testify in court that this signature isn't yours. I know someone good. She's worked on fraud cases before. Rebecca glanced at me. This is going to get ugly, Sarah. Are you ready for that? They stole from me. From Grandma. I know. But they're your parents. Once we file that police report, there's no going back. They could face criminal charges. Prison time. I thought about Grandma Rose, about her wrinkled hands holding mine in the hospital, about the way she'd smile when I'd read her my early story attempts, even the terrible ones, about her telling me that the cabin was for my dreams, not for anyone else's empire. File it, I said. The police report took 3 hours. The detective, a woman named Angela Martinez, listened to everything with the kind of patience that suggested she'd heard worse. When I showed her the signature comparison, though, her eyebrows went up. That's pretty blatant. she said. Most people who commit fraud are smarter about it. My parents probably thought I wouldn't check, I said. They think I'm passive, that I'll just accept whatever they decide. Detective Martinez made a note. We'll need to interview the loan officer, and we'll need a handwriting analysis. How soon can you get that? Rebecca checked her phone. I can have the expert here tomorrow. Good. Miss Chen, I have to warn you. If your parents are who you say they are, they're going to have expensive lawyers. This could take months, maybe years. I don't care, she nodded. I believe you. We'll be in touch. That night, I stayed at the cabin. Rebecca offered to let me crash at her place in Burlington, but I needed to be here. Needed to walk through the rooms Grandma had loved, touch the books on her shelves, sit in the chair where she'd spent countless evenings reading. I made tea in her old kettle and sat on the porch, wrapped in one of her quilts. The lake was dark and still, the last light fading from the sky. My phone kept buzzing. Mom, Dad, Emma. I ignored them all. Instead, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not the novel I'd planned. This was different. This was documentation. Every conversation I could remember. Every interaction. Every time my parents had dismissed my dreams, chosen Emma over me, made it clear that I was only valuable if I served their purposes. I wrote until midnight, until my tea was cold and my fingers were cramping. Then I saved the file, backed it up 3 times, and finally allowed myself to cry. The handwriting expert arrived at Rebecca's office the next morning. Her name was Dr. Patricia Kim, and she had the kind of credentials that made me feel better about everything. 20 years of experience, testimony in over 100 court cases, published research on signature analysis. She spent 2 hours examining the documents, comparing them to samples of my real signature. She used magnifying glasses, special lights, measurement tools I didn't recognize. Rebecca and I sat in the corner, drinking terrible office coffee and not talking. Finally, Dr. Kim looked up. This is a forgery, no question. How certain are you? Rebecca asked. I'd testify to it in court at 99% certainty. The person who forged this practiced, but they didn't get the pressure patterns right. See here? She pointed to the screen where she'd projected both signatures side by side. Your real signature has consistent pressure throughout. The forged one has hesitation marks here and here, where they paused to make sure they were getting the loops right. And the slant is wrong. Yours leans right at approximately 15 degrees. This leans left at about 8 degrees. Could you have that ready for court? Rebecca asked. I can have a full report to you in 48 hours. After Dr. Kim left, Rebecca leaned back in her chair and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just realized they were holding all the cards. We've got them, she said. The bank's fraud department was less enthusiastic about our evidence than I'd hoped. The investigator, a tired-looking man named Richard Chen, no relation, listened to everything and made non-committal sounds. We'll need to verify this with our own experts, he said. How long will that take? Rebecca asked. 4 to 6 weeks. The foreclosure is in 3 weeks. He shrugged. That's a different department. Rebecca's smile got sharper. If you foreclose on a property that was obtained through fraud, using forged documents that your employee notarized, you're going to be named in the lawsuit, along with Marcus Webb personally. I'll make sure of it. Richard's expression changed. I'll expedite the review. You do that. We walked out of the bank into the bright March sunshine. I felt lighter than I had in days. What now? I asked. Now we wait for them to make a move. Your parents have to know something's wrong by now. The bank will have contacted them about the fraud investigation. She was right. That evening, my father called. I almost didn't answer, but Rebecca had told me to document everything, so I put it on speaker and started recording. Sarah. His voice was cold. What have you done? I filed a fraud report with the police about someone forging my signature to steal Grandma's cabin. You're being ridiculous. That cabin belongs to the family. It belongs to me. Grandma left it to me. Your grandmother was senile at the end. She didn't understand what she was doing. She was sharp until the day she died, and you know it. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, that controlled, measured breathing he used when he was trying not to lose his temper. Sarah, you're making a mistake. Drop this investigation, let the bank handle the foreclosure, and we can all move on. I'll even buy the cabin from the bank and let you use it sometimes. You mean the cabin you're planning to buy at auction after you stole it? Another pause, longer this time. Who told you that? Does it matter? I know what you did, Dad. You and Mom forged my signature. You took out a loan in my name. You're committing fraud. And I have proof. You have no idea what you're talking about. I have a handwriting expert who says otherwise. I have the police report. I have a lawyer. And I'm not backing down. Sarah. His voice changed, softened. It was the voice he used on investors, on city council members, on anyone he needed to manipulate. Think about what you're doing. You're talking about destroying your family over a piece of property. You destroyed our family when you decided to steal from me. I'm your father. Then act like it. I hung up. My hands were shaking again, but this time it felt different. Not fear, anger. Righteous, burning anger. Rebecca listened to the recording and grinned. That's usable. He didn't deny it. He didn't admit it either. He didn't need to. The fact that he offered to let it go to foreclosure implies he knows about the loan, and offering to buy it back and let you use it? That's consciousness of guilt. Over the next week, things escalated fast. The bank's fraud department came back with their own analysis, confirming the signature was forged. They froze the loan, stopped the foreclosure, and opened an internal investigation into Marcus Webb. Detective Martinez called to tell me they'd interviewed Webb. He'd lawyered up immediately and refused to answer questions, which she said was basically an admission. Then Emma showed up at the cabin. I heard her car first, the expensive BMW that Dad had bought her for her 21st birthday. I watched from the window as she got out, looking uncertain in a way that was unusual for my confident little sister. I opened the door before she could knock. Sarah. She looked like she'd been crying. Can we talk? I stepped aside and let her in. She stood in the middle of Grandma's living room, her hands shoved in her jacket pockets, looking anywhere but at me. I didn't know, she said finally. I swear I didn't know what they were doing. Okay, they told me you were being selfish, that Grandma left you everything because she'd always favored you, that you didn't deserve it because you'd abandoned the family. And you believed them. She flinched. I wanted to believe them. It was easier than admitting that Mom and Dad might be wrong about something. I sat down on the couch, suddenly tired. What changed? Emma pulled out her phone and showed me an email. It was from Dad to Mom, dated January 10th. The subject line was, Rose's cabin situation. I read it. Then I read it again. It was all there. The plan to forge my signature, the loan officer they'd paid off, the foreclosure timeline, the auction strategy, everything. Where did you get this? I was looking for something else on Mom's computer. She'd left her email open. Emma's voice cracked. Sarah, they're criminals. Our parents are criminals. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I should have known. I should have questioned it. I always believed them when they said you were the problem. I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. She was 22, younger than I'd been when I'd finally realized our parents weren't the heroes they pretended to be. She'd been sheltered, spoiled, manipulated into thinking she was special when really she was just useful. Forward me that email, I said. Are you going to use it against them? Yes. Emma nodded slowly. Good. They need to face consequences. She forwarded the email, then sat down next to me on the couch. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the lake lap against the shore. I'm going to testify, Emma said quietly. If it goes to trial, I'm going to tell them everything I know. They'll cut you off. I know. I'll figure it out. Maybe I can be like you, get a real job, build something that's actually mine. I put my arm around her shoulders. You can stay here while you figure it out. Grandma would like that. The trial took 18 months. 18 months of depositions, motions, negotiations, and waiting. Rebecca said it was actually fast for a fraud case this complex, but it felt like forever. The criminal case went first. Dad and Mom were both charged with forgery, fraud, and identity theft. Marcus Webb, the loan officer, was charged as an accomplice. The prosecutor was a sharp woman named Allison Reeves, who looked at my parents like they were particularly disgusting specimens. I sat in the courtroom every day, with Emma on one side and Uncle Mike on the other. Rebecca sat behind me, ready to object if the defense tried anything shady. The evidence was overwhelming. The forged signature, Dr. Kim's analysis, the emails Emma had found, Webb's financial records showing a $30,000 deposit 2 days after the loan was processed, security footage from the bank showing Mom and Dad meeting with Webb. Their lawyers tried everything. They claimed I'd actually signed the documents and forgotten. They suggested Grandma had been manipulated into leaving me the cabin. They painted me as ungrateful, vindictive, trying to destroy my own family. But the handwriting evidence didn't lie. And when the prosecutor put me on the stand for my victim impact statement, I didn't hold back. My grandmother left me that cabin because she believed in my dreams, I said. looking directly at my parents across the courtroom. She wanted me to have a place where I could write, where I could build something meaningful. My parents stole that, not because they needed the money, not because they deserved it, but because they couldn't stand the idea that I might have something they didn't control. I saw my father's jaw tighten. My mother looked away. They raised me to believe that family means loyalty, that family means sacrifice. But what they really meant was that I should sacrifice everything for them, and they owed me nothing in return. When I chose my own path, I became worthless to them. Worthless enough to steal from, worthless enough to commit fraud against. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Dad got 18 months in federal prison plus restitution. Mom got 12 months plus restitution. Webb got 2 years. All three lost their professional licenses. The civil suit was almost anticlimactic after that. My parents were ordered to pay $500,000 in damages. Emotional distress, legal fees, lost opportunities, and punitive damages because the fraud had been so blatant. I didn't expect to ever see most of that money. Their assets were tied up in the business, which was collapsing now that both of them were convicted felons. But the principle mattered. That summer, I finally got my writing retreat. Emma lived in the cabin with me, working remotely for a nonprofit while she figured out her next move. Uncle Mike visited on weekends, bringing groceries and terrible jokes. I wrote every morning, sitting on the porch with my coffee, watching the sun rise over the lake. The novel was flowing now, finally, a story about a woman who'd spent her whole life trying to please people who would never be pleased. In August, a literary agent requested the full manuscript. By October, I had a book deal. By the following spring, Cabin of Dreams was on shelves, dedicated to Grandma Rose, who taught me that my dreams matter. Emma found her calling in victim advocacy, helping other people navigate the legal system after being abused by family members. She was good at it, fierce and compassionate in equal measure. Uncle Mike retired from counseling and started teaching writing workshops at the local library. He said I'd inspired him to pursue his own creative dreams. My parents served their time. They sent letters from prison, asking for forgiveness, claiming they'd been under stress, that they'd made mistakes. I didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. The cabin became exactly what Grandma Rose had wanted it to be, a place for dreams. I opened it as a writer's retreat, hosting 10 teachers every summer who wanted to pursue creative projects. They stayed for free, wrote on the porch, supported each other's work. The first year, a middle school English teacher from Boston finished her poetry collection. A high school drama teacher from Maine wrote a one-woman show. An elementary art teacher from Vermont illustrated a children's book. They all dedicated their work to their own Grandma Roses, to the people who'd believed in them when no one else did. I kept a photo of Grandma on the mantle, right next to her old typewriter. Sometimes, when the light was right, I swear I could see her smiling. The property was mine, the dreams were mine, and no one, not my parents or anyone else, could ever take that away again.